Hi, everyone. We will begin the AWARE here shortly, but in the meantime, please have your memo to the field, the most recent version for September of 2020 on hand, and we will get started here at 1 o'clock. Hi, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome to the September 2020 AWARE. Please, if you don't have it already, get the most recent September 2020 memo to the field available in front of you. We'll walk through the pieces in there as far as the new final changes to criteria, as well as we have one that's remaining as proposed. And then at the end here, we'll get to, we have several items for your information relative to the CAR, PVP, and other areas that you'll want to be informed of. And then to wrap it up, we'll end with our usual question and answer session. Okay, so here we are, Tuesday, September 15th, and let's go ahead and get started. I am joined today by our President and CEO, Michelle Edwards, and she'll give an intro here momentarily, as well as Ms. Michelle Bonacore, Director of Institutional Compliance. She'll be informing you as well on several of the CAR pieces, PVP pieces, and whatnot. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and kick it over to Michelle for her intro. Oh, Michelle, I think you're muted.
You think we've been using this technology for months now, we would be better. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're connecting from. I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe as we're all adjusting to the new normal. All of us at ACICS are continuing to work remotely, including the introduction of fully virtual visits this travel cycle. As you know, any virtual visits will require an on-site follow-up visit once it's safe and advisable to do so. Staff, evaluators, institutions, everyone seems to be adapting well, and we may be able to incorporate some parts of the virtual visit to the entire process moving forward. I want to also encourage you to visit our website and check out the staff listing. We've made some changes to our organizational chart to be able to provide the best support to you as our institutions and the students in which we serve. Two of our directors, both Carly and Michelle, are on the call with me today. Wanted to take a minute to provide a brief update on our status since we last spoke at the annual meeting in June. As I communicated, the Department of Education rescheduled ACICS to the February meeting of the National Advisory Committee and provided an updated draft staff analysis for the monitoring report. As you might remember, in November 2018, the Secretary stated the agency was in compliance with 4 of the recognition criteria, but required additional monitoring. And yes, this is still related to our 2016 renewal of recognition review. As I talked about in June, this fall we intend to get, or we should get, a final staff report that will include the final department recommendation regarding that renewal of recognition. We'll then appear before NACICS in February 2021, and they'll make their recommendation to the senior department official. We are still on track to appear before NACICS in July of 2021, which would be for our renewal petition, which we submitted to the department in February. I know that the saga continues, and it's been a long road for all of us, and I still don't have a crystal ball. But again, I can tell you with 100% confidence that the ACICS team, the commissioners, the staff, the evaluators, everyone has gone above and beyond, working tirelessly to do the right thing. We don't know how the department will ultimately rule, but we remain committed to continually improving and evolving our processes to ensure that we not only remain in compliance with current federal requirements, but also foster an environment of rigorous quality and continuous improvement, both at ACICS and our accredited schools. There's a lot on today's agenda. It was a big memo, so I wanted to pass it on to Carla to get things started. As she mentioned, I'll stay on the call for the duration and would be happy to address any questions you may have after the presentation. Thanks, Carly.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So as she mentioned, it was a very busy August meeting, so let's go ahead and continue on here. We're going to go through the several items that were finalized at the August meeting, as well as we do still have one that is remaining as proposed due to feedback from all of you in the field. With that, and then we have several informative pieces along with our Q&A session at the end. Okay, so the finalized criteria revisions. The criteria will be published at the end of the week here for review. It'll include all of these items as you saw in your memo there, including we finally were able to put out our new criteria for the revised appendices as part of our systematic review to include those for distance education, those for ESL. We've revised our guidelines on disclosure and notification to better align with our current practices, as well as the new federal regulations that were finalized on July 1. Our appendix on teach-out plans and agreements, as well as the initiation and evaluation of program changes, which was also a piece that was part of our systematic review schedule. Additionally, some minor changes to legal organizations, particularly as they relate to institutions located outside of the United States, reasons for revocation, the removal of campus consolidations, change of control revisions, revisions to review board criteria, debarment notification, and adverse actions. So several pieces there, and let's go ahead and go into those. So as I mentioned, for distance education, this one was about 2 years in the running as part of our systematic review with several changes. If you remember back at our June aware, and as part of the memo there, we had all of these changes. Really, all was the same except for one piece that was revised due to, again, feedback from the field. So what were the changes? The inclusion of DE into the mission objectives. Further detail on the including DE as part of the CEP. I think that's an area that we found several of our institutions have struggled with, is how exactly to incorporate that DE mode of delivery into the pieces in the CEP. So we've included further detail on that. And then the stability of access as a requirement, the inclusion of professional development with faculty as part of that online delivery, and faculty evaluation relative to the online delivery as well. The incorporation of library resources, making that integral as part of the DE requirements, the evaluation of the effectiveness of the distance learning activities, making that part, and then as far as the publications piece, the disclosure requirements. The one change that was added as part of the feedback to the field was not just having somebody assigned to the oversight of distance education, but also that that oversight includes the effectiveness on the learning outcomes. So that's been included in those changes. And then also added to our glossary were definitions relative to the DE, such as interaction, memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, and then a service center, which is that piece that some institutions who are offering online, it may have a center for students to come and use computer stations or other student services or resources available to them at that site, or that the DE is being offered from maybe instructional space for a faculty member to use when doing online instruction. So those types of things would constitute a service center, which is to be distinguished from an actual learning site. So those are the finalized changes to Appendix H and the glossary relative to distance education. Okay. Then the next one, which right along with DE was has been a while, as far as a couple of years, to get all the necessary changes in there and to align them as well with the federal regulations, or the new ones that came out on July 1 there. So this one was basically a reconstruction of the ESL appendix to provide some clarity there and clean up the language. Again, on the standalone programs particularly, I know there was concern from some of the feedback, the removal of a section which talked about ESL courses as part of a program. there was concern that they could no longer offer those. Well, that is not the case. Rather, we've just removed that as an oversight piece in the ESL appendix, excuse me, because those will be evaluated as part of the program or as remedial courses. There's the language has clarified that program objectives, goals, and level of proficiency must be clearly defined, clarity to the admissions requirements, to include that adherence to the federal agency requirements. We removed a larger section about how to align to the federal requirements. However, obviously, you would refer to the federal regulations and their resources on ESL. Therefore, it's not needed to be a part of that appendix as far as our requirements. We also specified evaluation instruments for admitting students into ESL programs, as well as notice on enrollment agreements. Further changes include outlining minimum faculty qualifications along with that ever important professional development piece, adding instructional and community resource standards, specific student service requirements for students in ESL programs, ensuring satisfactory progress, as well as providing that cultural and immigration support to those students. Using the same instrument for entrance and exit exams to evaluate that process. And then the evaluation of the effectiveness of these programs should also be included in the CEP. Okay, and then the next appendix, this was the Appendix G, the Guidelines on Disclosure and Notification, which outlines all of the requirements from the DOE and all of our policies as far as notifying the public, our institutions, of council actions and policies. So this language was updated again to align with the new federal regulations that became effective on July 1, but also to better reflect current practices of our notification. So we simplified the location of policies and our list, our directory of our institutions. That's all on the website. So we clarified that. Notification of all council actions will be made within 30 days. That continues to be the case to all parties. However, there are additional requirements that within 10 days, we will notify again on the website, institutional closings, any voluntary withdrawals, and all expirations of accreditation will be posted within 10 days. And then same time notification provided to the Department of Ed, to state and other agencies of any show cause or adverse action. So, and that's done via a CC essentially on the letters, the action letters when they're sent. And then the public notification is also made on our website within that next business day. And then institutions, of course, must notify their students and any prospective students via a communication or publication on their website within 7 business days of those actions. Okay, teach out plans and agreements. This is section 2-2-303. And these were aligned again with the recent federal regulations and the addition of conditions which may require a teach out agreement, and that outside of those which may require a teach out plan, but and the language specifically states if practicable, a teach out agreement may require heightened cash monitoring from Title IV participants. If they are put on that condition, we may require a teach out agreement. If there is action to deny or withdraw. Obviously, when that is put out, there would be a teach out plan or a teach out agreement, excuse me, required. If there is campus closure, if we're notified of a campus closure, we make every effort to work with our institutions to get those students in a good place in a teach out with other institutions. Or if there's an action from a state agency to remove or revoke approval, that would require a teach out agreement. So there are several steps that come before these conditions, obviously, or when we are notified of a closure or anything, we will take several steps to work with our institutions to get our students into a teach out agreement.
Carly, if I can just add on to that real quick. I know Carly mentioned that, this is to align with the federal regs that were approved on July 1st. I will tell you the department is very, very interested in this and follows up within several weeks of a closure. We've had a few that have occurred in the last couple months, and the department is requiring copies of everything, including all of the notifications, all of the teach out plans, all of the student audits. And so this is a very big hot topic for the department right now. So if anybody has any questions about it, feel free to reach out to us directly on that.
Thank you, Michelle. And we've also added glossary definitions as far as teach out, just to clarify between a teach out agreement versus a teach out plan and what that entails. Okay, program initiation and changes. So this has been part of a bigger overhaul of just our program procedures and policies in general. So first was looking at the standards and kind of cleaning those up. And that's to include our DE applications, other application processes. So programs no longer must be offered residentially before applying for them online. And similar to new programs, distance education mode of delivery must be started within that 1 year proposed start date. Certainly if, we've seen a lot of delays and interesting circumstances in this year of 2020. So if there is a change in your proposed start date, please be sure to notify us and just keep us posted of those changes. And then with the language cleanup, just making sure that there were different terms used for substantive change, making sure those all are consistent as well. Okay, now we move into the legal organization and that change, and that's part of our minimum eligibility requirements for initial applicants, which, as I'm sure you're aware, institutions must maintain and must continue to meet those minimum eligibility requirements to remain a member. But this is just to allow for other legal structures that may not necessarily fit the American model of a legal structure. So obviously we cannot anticipate every type of structure that we may see. So this just was a language change to allow that they may be considered on a case-by-case basis for institutions located outside of the US. Then change to reasons for revocation. This was really just a removal of these under one area, as they were really covered under withdrawal by suspension. Now, just to be clear, this does not mean that if you do not submit your CAR on November 1, that you are going to undergo a withdrawal by suspension. Obviously, that there are procedures that come before that. There is a late fee schedule. There will be several communications to find out what's going on with the institution, why such reports, financial reports, have not been received. But worst case scenario, should there be no response and failure to submit, therefore could end up with a withdrawals by suspension. And that has always been in the criteria under that language, failure to submit those reports. However, this is just cleaning up the language, removing it from 2-3-401 reasons for revocation. And in addition, part of the cleanup was removing a requirement of certification by the CEO for submission of the card. That is no longer a requirement in submitting that report. Section 2-2-202. So this basically removes language relative to a campus consolidation. So it would no longer be considered a consolidation. Rather, the process would include the closure of one campus and transfer of those students to the other campus. This ensures accurate reporting of those students. It ensures a review of the campus to ensure that that the appropriate equipment and facilities for the programs that they're approved at. Therefore, there's no merging of an institution to try to merge program offerings and students, and that it becomes very convoluted. This makes it a much cleaner process as far as the closure of one campus, transfer of students to that campus, and any additional programs that the institution wishes to offer at the remaining campus would have to be added as well. And I forgot my other point there. But again, it just makes it just a cleaner process, better for tracking those students. Change of control. This revision provided a distinction between a change of control for specifically for not-for-profit institutions and what the requirements are for that they must receive approval prior to the change. A change of control application must be submitted and followed up with a quam visit. So similar to a change of ownership at a for-profit, a change of control would also require these elements. Okay, our next change is relative to our review board. Again, this was kind of a cleanup to align reviewing federal regulations, but also a removal of the possibility of a reversal of a council action, as this is not part of the federal regulations and certainly not the place of an outside body to reverse the action made by the council. So it was just a removal of that piece. And then removal of language which requires the recording of any dissenting opinions within the review board, as it is viewed as one body, one decision-making body. So they would record the decision as a body versus making any indication of dissenting opinions within the board. So the possibility for those two pieces were removed from that language. Okay, the next piece, this is part of kind of updating our language as far as debarment and the notification procedures for when there is an intent to bar an individual or a group of individuals from an institution, so that the notification will now only be sent electronically with red receipt rather than done via post mail. So that was the update to that language there. Okay, and this was another cleanup of language. This was just to make it consistent throughout the criteria. We found that in several places it was referred to as a negative action and other places referred to as an adverse action. So this was just to clarify throughout what an adverse, make it consistent and make it an adverse action. And there will also be, as you'll see with the additional stipulations, proposed language, we're also adding the definition of an adverse action to the glossary. Yep. Okay, and now we move on to the one proposed item remaining. And as I mentioned, that's that additional stipulations piece. So this is really language that the council is proposing adding to allow them to limit or otherwise condition as necessary to ensure the protection of students when an institution is found to be materially out of compliance. So when there are severe instances of non-compliance and there is a concern that the institution may close or lose their accreditation, being able to take additional actions. And the intent here is to assure due process, allow the institution to have a hearing, but also to protect students or potential students in the case of a closure or loss of accreditation. Okay, and this went out as proposed, if you remember, in the June memo. However, based on some feedback from the field, the council added some language to qualify potential actions that may be taken in these instances, to include a ceasing enrollment, approval before submitting for substantive changes, and other pieces similar of that nature. So you can see those there in the memo. But this was just adding the ability to take these additional actions, like I said, to ensure the protection of students in instances of serious non-compliance. Okay. So please review that carefully, and if you have any further feedback, be sure to provide that along with any feedback to any of the additional items in our FYI section in your survey that's provided in your memo. Okay, and now we move on to our for information only. Again, as I mentioned, there are some critical pieces here that you'll really want to pay close attention to, especially as we near our submission date for the car to include those PVP placements. So we'll move forward. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Bonacor to talk to you a little bit about our new semi-annual car for 2021.
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you for coming out for the webinar today. I'm sure that you are all excited to hear that in 2021, we will be going to a semi-annual car. We will no longer be doing quarterly reporting. Again, that will be effective with the 2021 reporting year. So the car will be getting moved to a twice annual submission on May 1 and November 1 for the 2021 reporting year. A few other changes that just recently took place was that iPEDS released the new SOC codes for 2020, and there's a new CIP to SOC crosswalk. So what we have done is we have updated the PVP spreadsheet that you use to submit your placements. That would be the second tab on the spreadsheet. We have updated that with the new crosswalk and the new CIP codes. We are asking all institutions, which I know some of you have actually already started, to review all of your CIP codes and ensure that no changes are needed. Make sure that your CIP codes are accurately reflecting your program objectives. And if there is a change, you can let us know by sending an email to Terry Jelnick, and I believe her email address is in the memo. And we will, we will make those updates for you. Again, coming up in this car year, we introduced this in the car last year, was a PVP third-party verification. We will be again doing this for up to 10% of your submitted placements, and that will be placements submitted to your PVP as of October 14th. So we'll be doing the calculation off of that number to see how many eligible placements you can submit that way. So ensure you get those placements in before then. That capability will again open up in fourth quarter for your annual car, and it will open up on October 14th. And we will be accepting the third-party verifications through the 23rd of October. So this is a short window of about a week that you have. Also, as a reminder, ensure that your placements that you're submitting through the PVP, knowing that we cannot guarantee that anything submitted after October 29th will be reviewed and included in your car report. So please, again, ensure you're getting all of those placements uploaded and verified by your graduates or employers, because after the 29th, we cannot promise they will be reviewed by us.
And I think, Michelle, also just to kind of point out, that should be October 14th, 2020. So just want to make sure that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even catch that. Yes, we're not time traveling. That would be as of October 14th, 2020. Also, as a reminder for the third party, the only placements when you do submit for that, they can only be submitted on placements that are by title placements. So please ensure that you're keeping an eye on that, and we will only accept verifications from the work number or Equifax. So any third-party verifications from other verification services, we will not accept.
All right, and I'm going to interrupt for a couple slides here just to talk about our exciting two-cycle review year for 2021 coming up. Again, this was in the last memo to notify everyone that we will be switching from 3 cycles to 2 cycles. So therefore, the council meetings will be in May and November, as well as a policy meeting to be held towards the end of January, early February. For 2021, it'll be at the end of January here. Therefore, our visit cycles will be a little longer to facilitate the visits that will need to take place. So our first visit cycle for the winter will be January through March. And then the second visit cycle will be July through September. So for any of you institutions that have your renewal coming up for 2021, you should expect your visit to either be in January, March, or July through September. And notice notifications, I believe, have gone out to notify you of your cycle for next year. Then our IRC will be held in April and October. The memos will come out following our May and November meetings, so therefore in June and December. We will conduct financial reviews. They will be ongoing throughout the meetings, and then the student achievement review will have a separate meeting to review in December, most likely done remotely. And then the annual meeting will now be in January, combined with the policy meeting. So that's what we're looking at for 2021 here. Okay, and then as part of our systematic review, we talked about our new DE and ESL and program review pieces that were part of our previous schedule. Well, currently for this year and into next, we're looking at our library resources and services. We're looking at our international partnership agreements and study abroad, Appendix I and Appendix J for those pieces. We're working with third-party reviewers who have offered a review of that, but also soliciting any input from the field as far as recommendations to update language for additional requirements or for outdated requirements that you see in our current criteria. We just ask please provide your feedback on these. They can be again submitted via the survey at the end of the memo, or they can be sent to myself directly, Kay Ziegler at ACICS.org. Again, my email is all over the memo to the field and on the website as well. Okay, and then back to Michelle to talk about our CAR again, particularly for enrollment in graduates that are less than 10.
Thank you, Carly. So yes, as a reminder, and we had sent out previous communication, is that for the 2020 CAR reporting year, in this review, any outcomes for all of your programs that have enrollment or graduates less than 10, we will be requiring you to be in compliance in those programs in accordance with Appendix L. So be mindful of that, that will be looked at according to Appendix L this year when we do our December review. Also, our mitigating circumstances, which will be opened up again for this quarter for you all to, if you have any mitigating circumstances, to submit with your CAR, with the annual CAR. Just please be mindful that we will only be giving consideration to circumstances that are considered extenuating. And in the application, it does outline kind of the areas which include anything that relates to your local area, maybe your state or national requirement or trends. Student population, but I do want to qualify that with student population would not be a small cohort size, less than 10. That would not be a qualifying reason. So please be mindful. It would be anything that's kind of unique or extenuating within your student population. Program length, maybe graduates pending the completion of licensure or certification exams, and so on and so forth. Please ensure when you submit that application, which will be available October 1 when we open up the CAR, the annual CAR, you submit that in the additional documents section of your CAR and ensure that you provide supporting documentation to adequately evidence and provide that support needed for the explanation you're providing to get that mitigating circumstances consideration. Okay, the deadline for the CAR is November 1. It will be closing, and that is the same for the mitigating circumstances application. They must be submitted with your CAR before it closes on November 1.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And if you have questions on any of these things, please go ahead, start entering your questions now. As we come to the end, we will start going through any questions that you may have. But hopefully we've done such a stellar job that maybe you don't have many questions. We'll take it that way. Just as a reminder, workshops, we do have one renewal workshop that's actually this Thursday, you guys. So if you haven't registered for that and need to, please go ahead and do that immediately. And then we are also working on some revisions and preparations to put out a CEP, that much asked about CEP workshop, and also deferral workshops for those of you that will be working on responses or need any assistance there. So just a preview of some things that are to come there. And to view any workshop offerings and to register, you can go to ACICS.org/workshops. 。 And then evaluators. If you have anybody at your institutions, for some of our current evaluators, if you have friends in any content areas, we have completed a review of our current evaluators in the system, trying to update information and get that also. Now we are starting to seek new evaluators in different areas. Particular areas of need include student relations, digital sciences, and health sciences, as well as other fields. So if you have anyone that's interested in contributing to our educational systems, please send them either our information or have them provide their information. They can visit our website, again at acics.org/evaluators -becoming is to get to the information there, or they can just send an inquiry to evaluatormanager@acics.org. And we are continuously looking to add evaluators to our pool for the different program areas and the general areas of educational activities, student relations, and whatnot. So please, if you do have anybody that may be interested, go ahead and send them that information. Then my usual plug for your feedback on the call for comment, as I've already mentioned it a couple times this webinar. It's available. The link is there in the memo to the field. It's also available on the website under the memo to the field page. There's a direct link there, and I'll be sending out a reminder as well. So please, any feedback that you do have, I know we've only got one proposed change, but any of our systematic review areas or any areas that you've noted previously or in general, that could help us add it to our systematic review schedule or just get it on the agenda to review for next year's policy review. So please provide any feedback that you do have. We are always available via email, or let's get it captured on that call for comment survey. Okay, so now we will go ahead and open it up to questions that we have here.
Carly, it looks like the first one is just clarification, or I guess Michelle, clarification on the dates for the semi-annual CAR.
Let me unmute myself. Yes, the semi-annual CAR will be, the dates will be, the due dates will be May 1 and November 1.
No, the period. So yes, it'll be
on the period.
yeah,
Oh,
Andrea,
okay.
you're right. It'll be July 1 to December 31st, and then it'll be January 1 to June 30th. So that those dates are correct.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what the question you're asking, Jane, about an internal memorandum of understanding. So if you can kind of clarify what you're asking on that, we'd be happy to answer that.
Okay, I think there's a question here regarding the less than 10, asking if previous years, if they had enrollment under 10, will that be considered when taking an action? That would have been considered a mitigating circumstance previously. This will be the first year that we will look at it. So this would be year one for your 2020 car submission. Okay, so I think for Jane, for the MOU question is, do we have to send MOUs we use just within our campuses? Or is that for an outside MOU? So MOUs would, if in play, would probably be submitted with the application, but would also need to be on hand for any site visits. So I think having them on hand for internally as well as externally. I hope that answers your question, Jane.
There's a question about the pandemic being a consideration for lower placement numbers. Certainly, with whatever documentation you would provide, that could be submitted as a mitigating circumstance. However, there's not going to be a blanket acceptance of. So basically, ACICS is not lowering the standard. So if you were critically impacted and provide the mitigating circumstances form and any documentation, that would be considered by the council. Okay, there's just another question just to clarify the reporting period for the car. So the reporting period is going to be July 1 through December 31st, and that is due on May 1st. And then the next period is January 1 through June 30th, and that would be due on November 1st. But again, when you're adding the second half of the year, but you're giving us an entire annual car. So you'll submit the first 6 months on May 1, and then when you submit the rest, you can update anything from the first 6 months, but you're giving us the entire annual car at that point. Does that make a little more sense? There's a question about the approval of distance education. And we are currently working on updating all of the applications. And that is one of the ones that is top of the list. So once we've updated the applications, we'll be sure to publish the procedures for distance education and for additional programs going forward. There's a question about monthly PVPs will continue, and yes, they will. You can, as always, submit your PVP as often as you would like. However, if you are not submitting once a month, at least once a month, that would trigger staff to reach out to you just to see what's going on. But again, with submitting those PVP documents, the sooner you submit that, the better chance you're going to have of the employer and the graduate responding to that. Carly, it looks like we've come to the end of the questions. I suppose we could hang on a few more minutes and see if anything pops up, but there is currently nothing waiting for us to answer.
Yep, so we'll hang out for a couple minutes here if anybody has any additional questions. But just on top of what Michelle had mentioned, we are currently going through the application procedures for several of the applications and hope to have DE within the next couple weeks here posted, and then certainly we will send out notification when those applications have been updated, just to make sure you're using the most recent applications.
And with that too, Carly, I know that a lot of folks download the materials, and if it's a non-sub application or a new program, and just use the same ones over and over again. But make sure as we're going through and starting to update documents, make sure that you are logging in and pulling the documents out of the application. We've updated some academic credit analysis. We've updated quite a few documents, and so just make sure that you're logging in each time so you can find out what's new.
Thank you. Okay, and the question, is the new criteria published on September 18th? Yes, that it will be the new publication date for the new criteria. Okay, I think that wraps up our questions. So thank you everyone for attending today. We hope you're all staying well and doing well, and we look forward to running into you on the next virtual encounter, whatever that may be. So everyone have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.